It was past midnight, and the school hallways were silent. The only light came from the dim glow of my classroom lamp as I sat grading papers, the sound of my pen scratching against the paper the only company I had. I was tired, heavy with thoughts I never spoke out loud, when the door creaked open. At first, I thought it was just the wind. But then, she walked in, my student. Her eyes caught mine with a mix of hesitation and something I couldn't name. She shouldn't have been there, not at that hour, and yet, a strange feeling told me this night was about to change everything. The night was quiet in a way that almost felt alive. The building was asleep, hallways emptied of their usual rush and chatter, lockers standing like silent sentinels in the dim glow of the emergency lights. I sat alone at my desk with a pile of essays scattered before me, the lamp casting a soft circle of yellow across the worn wood. My pen moved slowly, dragging over words that blurred in my tired eyes. It was late, later than I had planned to stay, but sometimes work became the excuse I used to avoid going home to an empty apartment where silence would only press heavier against my chest. The classroom at night had its own strange kind of comfort, quiet enough to think, lonely enough to remind me I was still here. Then came the sound that broke the stillness. A door creaked somewhere down the hall, faint at first, then closer. I froze, listening. At this hour, there should have been no one else. My fingers tightened around the pen as I looked toward the door, heart beginning to beat faster. And then, without warning, the door pushed open. A slim figure stepped inside, illuminated by the soft light from the hallway. For a moment I thought I was imagining it, a shadow born of fatigue, but then she lifted her head. It was her, my student. Her face half hidden by her hair, her eyes carrying something I couldn't place. She stood there like she wasn't sure if she was welcome, her hand still on the doorframe, her breathing uneven as though she had run to get there. You? The word left my lips before I could stop it. I glanced at the clock on the wall, it was nearly midnight. What are you doing here? My voice carried a mix of concern and disbelief. She stepped inside slowly, closing the door behind her with a soft click that seemed louder than it should have been in the silence. For a few seconds she didn't speak, and I could see the way her fingers fidgeted with the strap of her bag, a nervous habit I had noticed before in class when she was anxious about speaking up. But this time was different. There was no audience, no lesson, just the two of us in a room too quiet to hide anything. I couldn't sleep, she said at last, her voice low, almost fragile. And I didn't know where else to go. I leaned back in my chair, searching her expression, trying to read the truth hidden in her words. She looked different under the soft glow of the lamp. Not the student who raised her hand shyly in daylight, not the girl surrounded by the chatter of friends, but someone stripped of those masks, someone more real. Vulnerable. This isn't a place to wander into at midnight, I said gently, though my tone softened without me meaning to. If something's wrong, you should be home, resting. She shook her head, stepping closer to my desk as though the shadows behind her might swallow her if she lingered too long at the door. Her eyes caught mine and held them in a way that made me forget what I was about to say. Home doesn't feel like home right now, she whispered. I just needed to be somewhere I could breathe. There was a heaviness in her words that settled into the room. I wanted to press, to ask what she meant, but something in me stopped. Instead, I nodded slowly, gesturing toward the chair across from me. She hesitated, then moved forward, her footsteps barely making a sound against the floor. She sat, folding her arms across her chest as if trying to keep herself together. For a while neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable but charged, filled with things unsaid. I picked up my pen again, only to set it back down, my attention drawn entirely to her presence. There was something in her eyes that wouldn't let me look away. She was staring at the desk, tracing invisible lines with her fingers, lost in thought. I cleared my throat softly. "You seem troubled," I said, my voice quieter now. "Is there something you want to talk about?" She looked up, and for a second her gaze was sharp, piercing, like she was searching to see if she could trust me. Then her face softened, and I saw something raw flicker in her expression, something she hadn't let others see. She didn't answer right away, and that silence told me more than any words could. Sitting across from her, I felt a strange pull, a shift in the air I couldn't explain. She was my student, yet at this moment she was also just another soul, fragile and uncertain, reaching for something in the dark. My chest tightened, and I realized I was holding my breath. The night outside pressed against the windows, and inside that classroom, the world shrank down to just the two of us, caught in a moment neither of us had expected. And somewhere deep inside me, a voice whispered that nothing would ever be the same again. She sat there with her shoulders tense, eyes darting toward the floor as if she couldn't bear the weight of my gaze. For a long while she didn't speak, and I didn't rush her. The clock ticked softly above us, each second stretching out, filling the quiet like a heartbeat neither of us wanted to disturb. Finally, she exhaled, a shaky sound, and whispered, "Do you ever feel like no one really sees you?" Her voice cracked on the last word, and I felt my chest tighten at the fragility behind it. I leaned forward slightly, trying to meet her eyes, but she kept staring at her hands. They were trembling, though she tried to hide it by folding them together. I didn't answer right away because the truth of her question was heavier than anything I had expected. Instead, I gave her the space to keep going, and she did, her words spilling out in a rush that seemed to have been waiting for release. At home, I'm supposed to be perfect. The good daughter. The one who doesn't make trouble, who follows all the rules, who makes my parents proud. But I feel like I'm just playing a role for them. They don't see me, not the real me. If they did, they'd hate me. I know they would. Her throat tightened as she spoke, and she quickly wiped at her eyes as if ashamed of the tears forming. I wanted to reach across the desk, to comfort her, but I stayed still, afraid that one wrong move might make her retreat. My voice softened, almost breaking in the stillness. "You don't think they would understand?" She laughed, but it wasn't out of amusement, it was sharp, bitter, the kind of laugh that covers hurt too deep to show. "Understand? They can't even stand when I dress differently or when I talk back. If they knew the truth about me, they'd probably throw me out. I've seen it happen to other people. I've read their stories online. Parents who say they love their kids unconditionally until that kid shows them who they really are. Then suddenly it's shame, it's punishment, it's silence." Her words filled the room with a heaviness I could feel pressing against my skin. My heart ached, because I knew the truth of what she was saying. I had seen it too many times, young people crushed beneath the weight of expectations, forced to hide the best parts of themselves out of fear. And yet, in her trembling confession, there was a bravery that made me admire her. I leaned back slowly, allowing my own memories to surface, the ones I usually kept buried. "I know what that feels like," I said quietly. Her head snapped up, surprise flashing in her eyes, as though she hadn't expected me to admit anything personal. For a moment we just looked at each other, the unspoken recognition passing between us. "When I was your age," I continued, "I spent years pretending too. Pretending to like boys, pretending to fit into the neat little box everyone wanted me to live in. And the whole time, I felt like I was disappearing inside myself. Like every day I gave up a little piece of who I really was just to survive. Her lips parted, but no words came. She blinked rapidly, as though she couldn't believe the connection we now shared. "What did you do?" she asked finally, her voice so soft I barely heard it. I paused, letting the memories wash over me. The faces, the voices, the sting of words that had cut deeper than knives. "I fell in love with a girl," I whispered. And for the first time I felt alive. But I was too afraid to fight for her. I let fear win. I let people's opinions control me, and I walked away from the one person who truly saw me. The silence that followed was thick, almost suffocating. Her eyes shimmered with something between sadness and awe. You understand," she breathed. And in those 3 words was the weight of everything she had been carrying, everything she hadn't been able to tell anyone else. She finally looked at me fully, her gaze steady, her defenses breaking. There was no student and teacher in that moment, no roles, just 2 people stripped of pretense, seeing the rawest parts of each other. I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said, my voice low but certain. "I understand more than you know." Her lips trembled, and she looked away quickly, pressing her sleeve to her eyes. The quiet sound of her sniffle broke something inside me. Without thinking, I reached across the desk and rested my hand gently on hers. She stiffened at first, then let out a shuddering breath as though that simple touch was the anchor she had been searching for. Her fingers curled slightly, not holding mine but not pulling away either. "You're not alone," I said firmly, though my voice still carried the ache of all the years I had felt exactly that way. "Even when it feels like the whole world wants you to hide, even when it feels like you're carrying this secret all by yourself, you're not. Not anymore." She closed her eyes, and a tear slipped down her cheek, catching the glow of the lamp. For the first time since she walked into the room, her shoulders loosened, her body leaning slightly forward as if allowing herself to rest, to believe me. The clock ticked on, the world outside forgotten. In that fragile space between us, a bond was forming, one made not of words alone but of the silence we had both carried for too long, finally shared. And though neither of us dared say it aloud, we both felt it, something had shifted, and nothing could ever return to what it was before. The room had grown warmer, though the heater had been silent for hours. Maybe it was the way her eyes held mine now, not as a student looking at her teacher, but as someone desperate to be seen, desperate to know she wasn't the only one fighting a silent war inside. She didn't pull her hand away when I touched it, and that simple connection sent a ripple through me I hadn't felt in years. I should have withdrawn, reminded myself of the boundary that existed between us, but something stronger kept me still. Something that whispered this moment was bigger than rules. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "You don't regret it, do you? Telling me? About that girl you loved?" Her question sank into me with a weight I hadn't expected. Regret. It was a word I knew too well. I looked at her, at the way her eyes were searching mine for answers she had been too afraid to ask anyone else. I let the silence linger, because the truth needed time to rise. "I regret walking away," I finally said, my throat tight. "I regret letting fear win. But I don't regret loving her. Even now, all these years later, that love is still the realest thing I've ever known." My voice cracked at the end, but I didn't hide it. Her lips parted, and I saw a mix of wonder and pain flicker across her face. She whispered, almost as if confessing to herself more than to me, "I've never told anyone before. Not my friends, not even my best friend. I keep it inside because I'm scared that if I say it out loud, it'll make it real. And if it's real, then people will hate me." My heart twisted at her words, because I could feel how much it cost her to admit them. I leaned forward, lowering my voice to a soft promise. "I don't hate you. And saying it out loud doesn't make it shameful. It makes it honest. And honesty is the only way to truly breathe. She looked at me with tears shimmering in her eyes, her lips trembling like she wanted to speak but couldn't. So I shared more of myself, offering pieces I had buried for years, hoping they would give her courage. When I was in school, I had this friend, I said, my gaze drifting to the window as if I could still see her face in the glass. We studied together, laughed together, spent every moment we could together. And one night, she told me she loved me. I wanted to say it back so badly. I felt it burning inside me, but the fear was louder. I told her it was wrong, that we had to stop. I saw her heart break right in front of me. And that moment has haunted me every single day since. My chest ached with the confession, but when I looked back at her, I saw something soften in her expression. She wasn't judging me. She wasn't pulling away. If anything, she looked closer, as if my pain had bridged the gap between us. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd said it back? She asked carefully, her voice raw. I nodded slowly, a sad smile ghosting my lips. Every day. I imagine a different life. A braver version of me. Someone who chose love instead of fear. But I'm not her. I wasn't ready then. I just hope that one day, if life gives me another chance, I won't make the same mistake. The room grew quiet again, but it was no longer heavy with silence. It felt like a shared space, like the air between us was no longer something to fear but something alive, something connecting us. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes locked on mine. You're braver than you think, she said softly. Even telling me this, it makes me feel less alone. Like maybe I'm not broken after all. The vulnerability in her words struck deep inside me, and I shook my head firmly. You're not broken. You're human. And the fact that you can feel this deeply, that you can question, that you can love, that's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to protect. Her chest rose and fell with a shudder, and for a moment, she just looked at me, her eyes wide and filled with something unspoken. Gratitude. Admiration. Maybe even a reflection of what I had once felt for the girl I lost. The thought unsettled me, yet it also warmed me in a place I thought had gone cold forever. I saw her lips part as if she wanted to say something more, but instead, she let out a shaky laugh, wiping her face quickly with the back of her sleeve. It's strange, she said softly. I've never felt safe telling anyone this, but with you, it feels like you already know, like you've been here waiting for me to say it. Her words hit me harder than I expected, and I realized she was right. In her pain, I saw my own reflection, and in her courage, I saw the second chance I had wished for all these years. The lamp flickered slightly, casting shadows across the walls, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like the world outside didn't exist. Just two souls, tangled in the quiet honesty of a late-night classroom, sharing pieces of themselves they had never dared to share before. And though I told myself this was only a conversation, somewhere deep inside I knew it was more. It was the beginning of something neither of us had the power to stop. The air between us had shifted. It no longer felt like teacher and student, or like two people simply sharing words late at night. It felt charged, alive, as though every unspoken thought lingered between us, waiting to be touched. She leaned back in her chair, brushing her hair from her face, and gave me a look that held far more weight than any spoken question. It was a look that asked if love, in its rawest form, could ever truly be safe. I felt the pull of it in my chest, and for the first time in years, I didn't turn away from it. Instead, I let myself sit in that space, let myself feel it. She broke the silence first, her voice tentative. Do you really believe it? That love isn't wrong? Her words were almost a whisper, but they carried the weight of someone begging for reassurance, begging for the world to give her permission to exist as she was. My throat tightened. I held her gaze, steady and unflinching, because she needed more than soft answers. She needed truth. Yes, I said firmly. I believe it with everything in me. Love is never wrong. What people say, what society tells you, all the rules they try to force you into, that's what's wrong. But what you feel. The way your heart beats faster when someone's near, the way you can't stop thinking about them, the way their smile lights up a part of you no one else can reach, that can't be wrong. That's the purest thing there is. My voice cracked a little, but I didn't hide it. I wanted her to hear the rawness, to know I meant every word. She looked down, her lips trembling, and for a moment I thought she might cry again. But instead, she let out a soft laugh, almost embarrassed. You make it sound so simple. I've spent years trying to tell myself it's wrong. That maybe if I bury it deep enough, it'll go away. But it never does. It just sits here, she said, pressing a hand to her chest, hurting me more every day. I watched her closely, her fingers curled against her own heart as if she was holding it together by force. It doesn't go away, I admitted. You can try to hide it, try to bury it under work, under expectations, under fear, but love doesn't die quietly. It waits. And it finds ways to remind you it's still there, no matter how much you try to silence it. Her eyes lifted to mine slowly, as though my words were lifting some invisible weight off her shoulders. The pain in her gaze was still there, but something else flickered too, hope. A fragile, delicate hope that she was trying to protect from breaking. Do you think, she started, then stopped, biting her lip. Her hesitation pulled me closer without even moving. Do I think what? I asked softly, urging her to continue. She drew a shaky breath. Do you think it's possible to live like that? To love someone and not care what people think? The question hung in the air, heavy and daring. I wanted to give her certainty, to promise her a life untouched by judgment, but I couldn't lie to her. She deserved more than pretty promises. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the desk, speaking with all the honesty I had. It's hard. People will talk. They'll judge, they'll try to shame you, they'll tell you you're wrong. Sometimes it feels like the whole world is against you. But if you find someone who loves you back with the same fire, someone who looks at you and sees your soul, not your flaws, then yes, it's possible. Because love like that makes the noise fade. It makes you strong enough to fight. She stared at me, her lips parted, her chest rising and falling unevenly. The silence that followed was different now, filled not with fear but with possibility. Then, almost without thinking, she whispered, I wish I could be that brave. The words hit me in a way I hadn't expected, and I reached across the desk again, my hand hovering before finally resting gently on top of hers. You already are, I told her. You came here tonight. You spoke your truth when you could have kept it buried. That's courage. Don't underestimate it. She looked at our hands, her breath catching, and I could see the way her walls were slowly crumbling. The girl who had walked in trembling, unsure, was now letting herself be seen. Truly seen. Her fingers shifted, just slightly, pressing against mine in a silent response. It was the smallest movement, but it felt monumental, like a vow whispered without words. The classroom around us seemed to fade, the papers, the books, the ticking clock, all of it blurred into the background. All I could feel was the warmth of her hand in mine, the intensity of her gaze, and the quiet heartbeat of something growing between us. Something neither of us had expected, but neither of us wanted to push away. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of life, a reminder of what it meant to feel connected. And for her, I could see the shift in her expression, the relief of knowing she wasn't alone in her struggle, that someone not only understood but shared her truth. We didn't need to say it out loud. It was already there, pulsing between us in the quiet, undeniable, and fragile, yet strong enough to change everything. The quiet had stretched so long that even the ticking of the clock seemed to grow louder, but neither of us moved, neither of us pulled away. Her hand lingered beneath mine, soft and trembling, yet unwilling to break the fragile connection. I could see her chest rising quickly, each breath sharp and shallow, as though she were fighting against the weight of the words sitting on her tongue. Her eyes kept flickering toward me, then darting away, as if she was terrified of what I might see if she held my gaze too long. And then, after what felt like an eternity, she whispered, almost too low to hear, "There's something I have to tell you." My heart skipped. I didn't speak. I only nodded, letting her find her courage. She drew in a breath, shaky and uneven, her fingers clenching slightly against mine as if drawing strength from the contact. I like someone. I've liked them for a while now, and it scares me because I don't know what to do with it. I've tried to ignore it, but it's always there, no matter how much I try to push it away. Her voice faltered, and she bit down on her lip hard enough that I worried she might hurt herself. My throat tightened, the weight of her confession pressing against me. I told myself to stay calm, to stay neutral, to not assume anything, but my heart was already pounding in my chest. "Who?" I asked softly, almost afraid of the answer but needing to hear it. She went still. Her eyes lifted slowly, meeting mine, and in that moment everything inside me shifted. I saw it before she spoke, the truth shining in her gaze like a secret she had carried for far too long. "It's you," she breathed, her voice breaking. The words hit me like a storm. My stomach knotted, my pulse surged, and for a moment the world felt unreal. The student sitting across from me, the girl I had been guiding and protecting, had just confessed something I never expected to hear spoken aloud. I wanted to deny it, to push her words away, but the trembling honesty in her face made it impossible. She wasn't joking. She wasn't confused. She meant every word. Silence filled the room again, but this time it burned with intensity. I could feel the air thick with all the things I should say and all the things I wanted to say, two forces pulling me apart. Finally, my voice broke through, rough and unsteady. "You don't understand what you're saying. I'm your teacher. I'm supposed to protect you, guide you, not," my words trailed off because I couldn't finish them. "Not fall into this. Not let myself feel the way my heart was already racing." She shook her head quickly, her eyes glistening with tears. "I know. I know what you're supposed to say, what you're supposed to do. But I can't pretend anymore. When you talk to me, when you look at me, it feels like you see me in a way no one else ever has. And I don't feel invisible. I don't feel wrong. I feel real." Her words pierced through every defense I had tried to build. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came. Because wasn't that the truth? Hadn't I felt the same, that strange, undeniable sense of recognition, of seeing myself reflected in her, of feeling alive again after years of silence? My hands trembled slightly, and I pulled them back from hers, not out of rejection but because I was terrified of what would happen if I didn't. "You're making this harder than you know," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "You're not the only one feeling something, but this is dangerous. If anyone found out," she cut me off, her voice urgent, raw. "I don't care about anyone else right now. I care about you. I care about how you make me feel like I can finally breathe without lying to myself. I don't want to hide anymore." Her tears spilled over, running down her cheeks, and before I could stop myself, I reached out and wiped one away with my thumb. The warmth of her skin beneath my touch sent a shiver through me, a softness that undid every wall I had built. She leaned into my hand, her eyes closing for a brief second, and in that moment I realized I was already too far gone. I couldn't deny it. Not to her. Not to myself. My voice shook when I spoke, quieter than a whisper. "You make me feel things I thought I had buried years ago. Feelings I promised myself I'd never let out again." Her eyes opened slowly, locking onto mine with a depth that made it hard to breathe. "Then don't bury them," she said simply. "Don't hide from me the way you hid from her." Her words were like a knife and a bomb at once, cutting through my fear but soothing something raw inside me. The memory of the girl I had lost all those years ago surged forward, and with it, the realization that maybe this was life giving me a second chance. but it terrified me. My body ached with the pull of two truths, my responsibility to protect her, and my undeniable desire to hold on to the connection between us. I closed my eyes briefly, inhaling deeply, then let the words slip out before I could stop them. You don't know how much I want to believe you. How much I want to let this happen. The confession hung heavy in the air, dangerous and beautiful. She leaned forward, her hands clutching the edge of the desk as though anchoring herself, her voice steady now despite the tears. Then let it. Just for tonight. Let yourself feel it, without fear. My breath caught, my body trembling with the weight of the choice pressing down on me. The classroom felt smaller, the world outside non-existent. All that remained was her, the girl who had walked in to escape her loneliness, who had now placed her heart in my hands. And as I looked at her, I knew I was already holding it, and that no matter how much I tried to deny it, mine was already in hers too. The silence that followed was unbearable, thick and electric, as though the air itself knew something irreversible had just been spoken. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, the faint hum of the lamp, the sound of her unsteady breathing mixing with my own. She was still leaning forward, eyes locked on mine, her face streaked with tears but her expression steady in a way that unsettled me. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had said what she needed to say, and now she was waiting for me to either step closer or push her away. My hands trembled where they rested on the desk. I wanted to tell her this was impossible, that what she wanted could never happen, but the words refused to form. Every time I opened my mouth, what came instead was the truth pressing against my chest like a storm. That I wanted her. That I wanted this connection we had found in the quiet hours of the night, more than I wanted the safety of the walls I had built around myself. My lips parted, but no excuses came, only her name in a whisper, trembling as it left me. The sound of it made her inhale sharply, her shoulders quivering as though the air itself had shifted between us. I reached up before I could stop myself, my hand moving slowly, hesitantly, until my fingers brushed against her cheek. Her skin was warm, damp from her tears, and when she didn't pull away, my hand lingered, cupping her face gently. Her eyes fluttered closed for a moment, and I felt her lean into my touch, fragile yet certain. The clock ticked on, but the world had slowed. This isn't right, I breathed, though my thumb was still stroking her cheek. She shook her head, her voice firm though quiet. It feels right. That's what matters. The conviction in her tone broke something inside me. I had lived so many years bowing to rules, silencing myself, burying every flicker of desire that went against the world's expectations. And now here she was, raw and unguarded, begging me to choose love instead of fear. My chest ached as her hand slowly reached up, hesitating before resting lightly on mine. Her fingers curled around it, holding me there, anchoring me to her. The gentleness of it made my heart race faster than anything else could have. I closed my eyes, my forehead lowering until it nearly touched hers across the narrow space of the desk. I could feel her breath against my skin, shallow and uneven, and I knew we were both standing on the edge of something we couldn't take back. You don't understand what this could mean for me, I whispered, my voice breaking. For us. If anyone ever knew, she pressed her other hand against mine, firmer this time, and her voice trembled but didn't falter. I don't care who knows. I only care about you. About this. About finally being able to love without pretending it isn't there. Her words set fire to everything I had tried to smother. I let out a shaky exhale, feeling my resolve slipping further with every second. The truth was, she wasn't wrong. I wanted to stop hiding. I wanted to stop being afraid of my own heart. My thumb brushed across her cheek again, and this time, I didn't pull back. Slowly, carefully, as though the entire world might break if I moved too fast, I leaned closer until the distance between us was nothing more than a breath. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes wide and shimmering, but she didn't move away. She was waiting, giving me the choice, letting me decide if this would stay a fragile possibility or become something real. My heart hammered so loud I thought she could hear it, and then, without another thought to stop me, I closed the distance. The first touch of her lips against mine was soft, tentative, almost unsure. But the moment it happened, the room shifted. The weight I had been carrying for years fell away, and all that remained was the undeniable truth of us. Her lips trembled against mine, her hand tightening on mine as though afraid I might disappear. I pulled back just slightly, searching her face, terrified I had crossed a line, but the way she looked at me, like I had just given her air for the first time, made my chest tighten with something close to relief. I shouldn't have done that, I whispered, though even as I said it, I knew I didn't mean it. Her hand rose higher, touching my face now, her fingers brushing my jaw with a tenderness that made my eyes sting. "Then don't say it," she murmured. "Don't take it back. Please." Her plea unraveled me completely. I leaned into her touch, closing my eyes, and for the first time in so many years, I allowed myself to stop running. The kiss deepened, still soft but filled with everything we had both been holding back, everything we had both been too afraid to say until now. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't reckless. It was tender, careful, fragile, yet powerful enough to make the entire world outside that classroom disappear. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and trembling, the silence that followed was no longer suffocating. It was alive, warm, charged with the unspoken promise that nothing between us would ever be the same again. Her forehead rested against mine, her breath shaky but filled with a soft laugh that broke through her tears. "I've dreamed about this," she admitted in a whisper, and the honesty in her words made me feel both terrified and free. My hand stayed on her cheek, holding her there as though anchoring myself to the reality that this was no longer just a dream. And in that fragile stillness, I realized I had already made my choice. The faint light of dawn had begun to seep through the blinds, casting pale streaks across the floor as the world outside slowly awoke. Inside the classroom, however, time seemed suspended. The papers on my desk lay forgotten, the lamp flickered dimly, and the air still carried the weight of everything that had just happened between us. We sat close, our breaths uneven, our faces only inches apart, and for a long moment neither of us dared to speak. It was as though words might shatter the fragile space we had built, the fragile truth we had finally allowed ourselves to touch. I felt the warmth of her hand still in mine, and though my instinct screamed to let go before the world saw us, my heart refused. She shifted slightly, her hair falling into her face, and when she pushed it back, her eyes found mine with an intensity that stole the air from my lungs. "Do you regret it?" she whispered, her voice soft, uncertain, but carrying the weight of someone bracing for rejection. The question cut deep. I let the silence stretch because I wanted to give her more than an easy answer. I wanted to give her the truth, no matter how messy it was. I swallowed hard, feeling the ache in my chest. "I regret being afraid for so long," I said slowly, my voice breaking under the honesty. "But what just happened between us? No. I don't regret it. Not for a second." Her eyes filled with tears again, though this time they weren't heavy with sadness. They glistened like relief, like a burden she had carried for too long had finally begun to lift. She exhaled shakily and leaned her forehead against my shoulder, her body trembling in the quiet. I wrapped my arms around her, pulling her close in an embrace that felt both forbidden and desperately needed. Holding her like that, I realized how long it had been since I had let anyone this close, since I had allowed myself to feel something so raw and unfiltered. She clung to me tightly, as though afraid I might vanish if she let go. "I don't want this night to end," she murmured against me, her words muffled but clear enough to pierce through the fog of my thoughts. I closed my eyes, resting my chin lightly on her hair, breathing in the faint scent of her shampoo, something so ordinary and yet grounding. "Neither do I admitted softly, because the thought of stepping back into reality, into rules and expectations, felt unbearable. Still, I knew morning was coming, and with it, the questions, the consequences, the harshness of a world that would never understand. The thought made my stomach twist, but when she pulled back to look at me, her eyes shining with a mix of hope and fear, I realized there was one thing I couldn't let her doubt. "Whatever happens after this," I said gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face, "you are not alone anymore. Do you understand? No matter what anyone says, no matter what you face, I'm here. You don't have to carry this by yourself." Her lips parted, trembling, and then a small smile broke through her tears. "You don't know how much I needed to hear that," she whispered. "I felt invisible for so long. Like I was just screaming inside, and no one could hear me." I held her gaze firmly, my own voice filled with quiet conviction. "I hear you. I see you. And you don't ever have to hide from me." The weight of those words seemed to settle between us like a vow. She leaned closer, her lips brushing mine once again, softer this time, almost hesitant, but filled with the same undeniable pull that had drawn us together all night. When the kiss ended, she lingered there, her forehead pressed to mine, and we sat in silence as the first birdsong drifted faintly through the windows. The world was waking up, but neither of us was ready to step back into it. For that brief moment, inside that classroom, we let ourselves believe it was just us, two souls who had found each other in the shadows, holding on to something fragile but real, something worth risking everything for. And though fear still loomed on the horizon, love burned brighter in the quiet space between us, promising that this night would mark us forever. The sun had fully risen by the time we realized how long we had been sitting there, wrapped in the kind of silence that wasn't empty but alive, full of meaning we both struggled to put into words. The golden light streamed through the classroom windows, spilling across the desks, the floor, and finally over us, as if the morning itself wanted to remind us that no night lasts forever. She was still leaning into me, her fingers tangled in mine, her head resting lightly on my shoulder, but I could feel the tension beginning to stir again. Reality was creeping back in, demanding to be acknowledged. My heart beat faster as the weight of the world outside those walls pressed on me, heavy with all the rules, judgments, and consequences we both knew waited. I wanted to freeze time, to keep us locked in that fragile bubble where love felt simple and unashamed, but deep down I knew that wasn't possible. She shifted slightly, lifting her head, her eyes searching mine with a quiet intensity. There was no fear in her gaze anymore, just a kind of fragile courage that made my chest ache. "What happens now?" she asked softly, her voice breaking the silence like a delicate thread being pulled taut. I hesitated, my throat dry, because I didn't have an easy answer. "What happens now?" The question echoed through my mind over and over, colliding with every fear I had kept buried, every consequence I had imagined, and yet when I looked at her, all I could think was that I didn't want to lose this. I didn't want to lose her. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice shaking with honesty. "But I do know one thing. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. I can't promise it will be easy. I can't promise people will understand. But I can promise I won't let go." Her lips trembled, her eyes filling with tears, and before I could say more, she threw her arms around me, holding on so tightly it nearly knocked the air from my chest. I held her just as fiercely, my arms circling her as though I could shield her from the world with nothing more than the strength of my embrace. She whispered into my shoulder, words muffled but carrying more weight than I had ever heard in my life. "I've never had anyone choose me like this. Not without conditions. Not without shame." The sound of her confession shattered something inside me. I pulled back just enough to see her face, cupping her cheeks with both hands so she had no choice but to see the truth in my eyes. You don't ever have to earn my love. You don't ever have to beg for it. You are enough, just as you are. Do you understand me? She nodded, a tear rolling down her cheek, and I kissed it away without thinking, my lips lingering against her skin, sealing the promise I had just spoken aloud. For a long time, we just sat there, wrapped up in each other, breathing the same air, clinging to the kind of fragile hope that only love can give. Eventually, the distant sound of footsteps in the hallway pulled us back to the world outside. My heart lurched, panic rushing through me, but she squeezed my hand firmly, grounding me with her steady touch. "We'll be okay," she whispered with a kind of certainty that surprised me. "As long as we don't let them break us." Her words gave me strength I didn't know I had. I straightened, gathering the scattered papers on my desk in a half-hearted attempt to make the room look normal, but when she caught my hand again, stopping me, I realized she didn't want to hide anymore. And neither did I. The footsteps faded, the school's familiar hum returning as the day began in earnest, but inside that classroom something permanent had shifted. We stood together, side by side, ready to face whatever waited beyond that door. The fear was still there, yes, but it no longer outweighed the love we had found. If anything, it made it sharper, more urgent, more worth fighting for. As we walked out into the light of morning, our shoulders brushing, I realized that night had not been an accident. It had been a beginning, the kind that rewrites everything, the kind that makes you braver than you ever thought you could be. And though I didn't know what the future held, I knew one unshakable truth. I would rather risk everything and hold her hand in the open than spend another lifetime hiding in the shadows. Because love like this, raw, fragile, unashamed, was worth it. Worth every fear. Worth every risk. Worth all of me.